This is week 17 of the horror show. And the movie I'm doing this week is Phantasm 4, Oblivion. Came out in 1998. It's about an hour 30 long. Rated R. Directed by Don Coscarelli, composed by Christopher L. Stone. So Fred Myrow and Seagrave were in the very first one. Then it was Myrow and Stone for the second one and third one, and now for the fourth one, it's just Stone. So I'm not really sure about that whole story, why it turned out like that, but it's interesting. Maybe people had better things to do than do a soundtrack for a Phantasm movie, right? But anyway, Mike Baldwin plays Mike. Reggie Bannister plays Reggie, Bill Thornberry plays Jody, and Angus Scrimm plays the Tall Man. Now, I really like this movie. Is this my top 5 favorite movie of all time? No. But just because it's not there doesn't mean that the rating I'm going to give this movie indicates that it is a top 5 movie. It's definitely a top 50 movie. Maybe a top 25 movie? But the whole reason why I'm it's a top, if you took this movie as its own thing, then yeah, it's not good. But the whole reason why this movie, at least in my opinion, is good, is because of two things that I'll go and describe more about. One being, you have to watch the first one, but then second being, there's a lot of footage that they use in this movie that was filmed for the first movie, but they they didn't use for the first one, and it was just collecting dust somewhere. And so they, making Oblivion, they just go and use all those flashback scenes. And I really like that because they brought Michael Baldwin back, and of course he played Mike when he was the character Mike when he was a kid. So just seeing him all grown up and then seeing him as a kid, it's really nice, that consistency and whatnot. But anyway, the story's a 5 for me. Let me tell you the bio. Brace yourself for a journey beyond your worst nightmares as the Phantasm saga reaches its terrifying climax in a horrific explosion of gut-wrenching battles, lethal flying spheres, and a spine-tingling quest to discover once and for all the secret of the mysterious Tall Man. I already talked about it. For years, the Tall Man has waged a gruesome war against humanity, slowly populating the world with his undead legions. To stop the horrifying onslaught, two determined heroes, Michael and Reggie, hurtle themselves through a gateway in the time-space continuum to unearth a vital clue that may put an end to the horror. But time is running out as the Tall Man amasses his dark army for a blood-curdling final assault in which Michael and Reggie must fight not only for their lives, but for the lives of mankind. Now, that's a really, out there way of describing this movie. Here's how I'll describe this movie. Michael is trying to find himself and trying to figure out who he is and what he is, because in the third movie, the subplot, I didn't really talk about this in the third one, I really should have. But you see that Michael has a golden sphere in his head. And that's what the Tall Man wants. And so he's going out into the desert, and he's trying to find himself and trying to understand who he is, and of course trying to understand who the Tall Man is. Maybe try to figure out, the secrets and how to stop him, perhaps. But ultimately, just trying to, the main thing, though, is trying to figure out who he is and what, does he have a power? And, he finds out that he kind of does. The characters are a 5 out of 5 for me, because you start, as I kind of mentioned earlier with the flashbacks, it just brings the whole, all these guys grew up. No, 2 of them were already adults, basically, but, it's just really nice seeing the consistency, because all the characters that you see in this movie, whenever there's the flashback scenes, it's the same actors, and it's really nice seeing that consistency. You don't see it that often, because if there's a movie now, and there's a flashback scene, it's either a different actor, which is fine, because, right, or it's them using CGI to de-age them. And which is, whatever, but it's this is really special because they just used footage that they had already filmed. And that's just really nice, I think, because I don't think there's another time you see something like that, specifically this. And if there is, please let me know what it is, because I'm not too sure. If I don't think there is one that's like that, because if there's ever a flashback scene in, like, say, Halloween, in the newer ones, it's de-aged CGI, or it's different characters, which is, it's fine, because, you're not going to film something 20 years ago and then use it now to do something. It's just really perfect whatnot for Phantasm, because, Don trying to make the first one took like 4 years to make the first one, so I imagine there's a lot more footage that gets cut that's not in any of the movies. So it's just nice seeing that he was able to use some of it, and that kind of helps out with the whole the whole process of this movie, because this is probably, if I had to take a wild guess on how much, like, the lowest budget for a Phantasm movie was, it probably is this one, and which makes sense, because Lord of the Dead I don't think did that great, and he's probably like doesn't have any money, and it's like, oh, Phantasm, who wants to fund that it kind of died out a bit. It was a nice trilogy, but it had a terrible ending kind of thing. So he's like trying to be like, no, it's not over, the story's not dead yet, and this is him trying to continue it. So as I was kind of, I said character, I kind of jumped characters. So Mike's out in the desert trying to figure himself out. Reggie is trying to find him, and at the end of the movie, they meet each other. Of course, I've said that Jody, Bill Thornberry, playing Jody, he was in the third one. He was with Mike the entire time. Just being a big older brother, trying to kind of be like, hey, push him in the right direction, because he's dead now. But he's a sphere now. So it's kind of interesting, that whole complex, because it's like, should you trust him because he's a sphere now? But he's also trying to help, or so it looks. The music's a 5. The Phantasm music is always great. It kind of feels like they go back in the right direction in this movie. Now, maybe that's just me, but it feels a lot better. And then the setting's a 5, in which there's 2 aspects of the setting that there is. There's the aspect of the desert where Michael's at, and of course the desert that Reggie is traveling through to get to him, and of course there's like a town here or there that's deserted. It's classic Phantasm style. But then there's the whole traveling through space and time to understand things, and there's like a shot where Michael's in a city, and there's no cars driving. It's like a literal shot. I don't think any CGI is used. They found a great time to film. There's a flashback to when the tall man was Jebediah Morningside, when he was an actual person in like the 1800s. And it's like, it's really nice kind of seeing all of these, like, this movie feels really huge, but then when you take like a step back, it's not that huge. The budget's not great, but it just, I think Don's a really, really good director in how to make a movie like this, where I've kind of already said a bunch of stuff. He can, with very little, he could create something amazing. That's just the best way of putting it. And it's really nice seeing it, because you don't really see directors do that often. And of course, you look at his resume, there's not really a lot on there. It's just Phantasm and then a few other things. But yeah, I mean, it's just, this is a really nice movie. And then when you kind of start thinking on big picture, like in the movie, big picture ideas, like, is this just a dream? Is it like a multiverse? Like, I've always kind of viewed the Phantasm universe as a multiverse. But, the whole, like, dream is, like, there's, like, different Mikes throughout, the whole thing. And if he dies in one, then he kind of pops up, like, he wakes up in the dream in another body kind of thing. But, that's just me, though. So, seeing them kind of jump from universe to universe, or from time to time, it's pretty cool, I think. Atmosphere is a 5 out of 5 for me. I think all of it is really fitting, really catching and whatnot. And I think there's a lot of great moments and scenes in this movie. And you know what? About go back to characters a bit, because we're gonna talk about the ending. It's a really great ending. I think it's really sad because if you watched this movie in '98 and this is the ending, and you're like really invested in Phantasm, then you're just thinking, I can imagine, like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen next? So I'll tell you the ending, but like, if you're just listening to these things, I'm probably gonna make it sound less great than it is, and I think it's great. So if I were you, and I've never seen these movies, you really should watch these movies. But people are busy and people don't really have a lot of time, so I'd understand that. So Mike starts figuring out he has powers. He tripwires the car that he has. So if he does certain things with his mind, telekinesis a bit, he can make it blow up. He goes with his brother to go and find the tall man and get him. But then Jody basically tricks him, and it's like Jody's just a pawn that the tall man uses. Jody and the tall man are about to get the thing out of Mike's head, but Mike is able to kind of fend them off, and he's able to get back to the car, the real world. Reggie's there, and it's about to be a face-off, and the tall man's the one that the tall man goes through, and he kind of pushes Reggie off, superhuman strength. You just throw him a toss, yeah. And then Mike uses the car with his mind to blow up, and it kills the tall man, and that drains a lot of energy out of Mike. And so, the tall man's dead, the car's blown up, Reggie's like on the ground, tired. He's still conscious. Reggie can still see what's going on, but he's just like really like worn. And Mike is also really worn out. But then the plot twist happens. There are already one of the portal kind of things, the two the gateways, whatever, the poles. And that's how, they got there originally. The plot twist is that the tall man comes through it, and he's back. Like, they just killed him, but there he is. The tall man observes the scene and goes to Mike, takes the thing out of his head. And it's a really, like, kind of scene to watch, because you're seeing the tall man take the thing out of his head. And he's going through a lot of pain, and you see Reggie, and Reggie's all, like, it's like really like he's about to start like crying. It's like you really feel bad for both of them. And then the tall man gets the sphere, and he just walks through the portal, never to be seen again, kind of thing. Reggie gets up, goes to Mike. Mike's kind of in a seizure kind of state, and then looks like he dies. Or kind of falls asleep or whatever, but I think it's like it looks like he dies. And so Reggie then gets his gun, and then he goes out and chases the tall man, and that's the ending. And that's like, whoa. I wonder what's gonna happen in the next movie. And if you're a Phantasm fan and you saw the fourth one, if someone told you that the next movie was gonna come out like 18 years later, oh, that'd be awful, because that's when the next one came out. But yeah, I mean, I guess ultimately, well, I mean, of course, this movie, IMDb has this movie at a 5.5 out of 10. I have it as a 5 out of 5. And I guess I would understand IMDb putting it as a 5.5 if you just looked at this movie as its own thing without any context. But then again, it's like, I think it's still really good. So I said 5 out of 5. So, I'm Sam, Flying Kite. This is the horror show. This week 17 of the horror show. I did Phantasm 4, Oblivion. And, definitely worth a watch. I think, anyway. There's one more Phantasm left. There's one more left, and then we're gonna have to pick a new franchise or a trilogy or whatnot. And I think I know what trilogy I want to do, but it's not gonna be. See, I was kind of thinking originally of either doing Phantasm next or Nosferatu next. You know, Nosferatu trilogy of the original, the 70s remake, and then the new remake. But I kind of changed my mind. I think I want to try to do a different trilogy, but it's not necessarily a horror trilogy, but there are some horror elements, especially in the second movie. The first movie is just a normal kind of like coming of age story, but not really like a kid growing up. It's a guy figuring out who he is. The second one's like a horror movie, kind of more like a thriller, and then the third movie is both. Like a spoiler alert, comic book movies, that isn't really about a comic. It's just a guy wanted to make a movie like it was a comic book, like it's based off a comic book. Or, you know, he wanted to make a comic book movie that doesn't have a comic. But, you know, well, it doesn't have a comic, I don't think, but kind of the big idea about the first one anyways, like, you know, comics, right? But, anyway, I'll see y'all next week for the last Phantasm movie, Phantasm Ravager. Bye.